Hi everyone, Sarah here from Sarah Homfray Embroidery. Welcome to my channel. This is a channel all about hand embroidery techniques, and we've got loads of videos on projects, we've got some stitches, we do some giveaways, loads and loads of stuff on there. We've got over 300 videos now, so do check some of those out. I hope you find something that you like. So today we're going to look at a really fun technique called Appliqué. So this is my essential guide to 5 appliqué techniques for beginners. So this is my appliqué technique that I did on my apprenticeship, and this one's quite complex, so we're going to come to this one at the end. I'm going to show you a couple of pieces just to show you what this technique is and what you can do with it first. And we're going to start with some simple ones, but I've just got to move the ginger cat because he's right under the camera and you'll just be looking at the bottom. So I'll move him out of the way and then we'll have a look at some pieces. Right, you. Sorry, matey. No, don't have a go at me. No. You can just sit there. Stay there. You look at my appliqué. Sit down here. So appliqué, or appliqué as some people call it, is the process of applying one fabric on top of another fabric in order to make either a pattern or a quilt or a background to do some stitching on. So it's just the process of layering up fabrics and applying one fabric to another. So let's have a look at these pieces here. So this is a piece that I did for a class up in Harrogate a couple of years ago. And this is my teapot design. So I've got my teapot up here and my teacups. These have been cut out of a quilting fabric and stitched onto this background. So they've got a tablecloth in the form of a piece of lace. So the lace went on first, then these have been applied onto the backing fabric, and then I've done some stitching, decorative stitching on top. So this one's got a bit of gold work on it here. These ones have got some gold work handles on them, and then I've done a big splash of flowery tea coming out of that teacup there. So these have been applied, and then I've added some stitching on to enhance that. So these are some butterflies that I did in the same way really. So this fabric is a quilting fabric, and I've actually cut these out on a Cricut cutting machine. You can just do it by hand, you don't have to have a fancy machine to do it. And I've managed to cut them out so that they're symmetrical in the pattern of the fabric, and then they have been applied to this background fabric here. And then I've done some stitching to enhance it. So again, we've got a little bit more gold work on them here, and I've got some different edges you'll start to notice here. So the edges of appliqué are what I'm going to show you today, how to cope with the edges and what you can do on the edges. Cat's gone. What you can do on the edges to make them look neat. So that's what we're going to have a look at today. And you can see some different edges here. We've got some stitches, different stitches along here. Got some gold edges as well. So we've got all sorts of different things that we can do. Just wanted to show you this one, because it's a slightly different idea. So this is still appliqué. So I have applied a piece of leather onto a background fabric. Now this leather has been cut out again with a die machine. It was quite fiddly, this one, and it's a really beautiful snowflake design. So this has been completely cut out separately, and then I've stitched it down onto this linen background, and then this time I've embellished it not with stitches but with some beads and some shiny jewels, and of course some spangles, to get some spangles in there. So you can use lots of different materials in this technique as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute as well. So that one is leather and beads and spangles on a linen background. So if you watch my channel regularly, you will have seen this one recently. So this is a piece of slow stitching. If you haven't seen that video, do check that out up here. That is a really fun thing to do, to have a go at, to use up all your leftover fabrics and to be nice and mindful and calm when you do your stitching. So do have a look at that video. And this is the piece that I did in that. And I just wanted to bring this one in because this has also got some appliqué techniques in it as well. So you can see these pieces of fabric here. They have been applied on top of each other. Now there's quite a lot of layers going on here, and you can really build those layers up when you do this technique. You can put as many layers on as you like, as you can get the needle through really. And this is my ground, this pink one. It's on a backing one there, and the blue, and then there's another piece on top, and there's one on top of that one, and there's another one on top of that one. So we're really building up the layers now, and they've been applied quite crudely, and I just mentioned the edges of them. Here's another edge that we can do here we can just fray that edge, and as long as that piece of fabric's not going to come off, we can create some really beautiful effects with that. So I just wanted to show you that one as well. So I just wanted to show you this one. Now if you're a quilter, don't look too closely at this one, but you'll understand the applique technique probably quite well. This is one that I actually did an art class when I was at the RSM. We did art once a week, and we went down to the river next to Hampton Court Palace where we were studying, and we studied the boats and the reflections in the water, and then we made a piece based on it. And we didn't have a lot of time to spend on this. We had lots of other stitching to do. I remember it being quite intense at the time, and I think I literally made this in a day and an evening to finish it, I think. But I just wanted to show you this because it's not on a frame. It's not a hard piece. It's a nice soft piece, just to show you that this is quite a versatile technique. And this boat here is one of the boats on the river in the top corner there. And I've actually painted that on a piece of canvas. Actually, it feels quite stiff. And then I've cut that out and I've applied that onto this background. And there's obviously all these layers of stuff going on as well. They've all been applied with some fairly crude stitching, but I think it works all right actually. I found this the other day and I was looking for some pieces for this video, and I'm quite pleased with it considering it only took me about a day to make it. So some big applique, you can make some really big wonderful pieces, and you can use it in your quilting as well. So I really wanted to show you that one. So let's have a look at my apprentice piece now. So this is getting quite complicated as far as techniques go. So this is my peacock that I did. This is one of the techniques we had to do on the apprenticeship to learn all of the different ways you can apply the fabric. So there's a lot going on in here, so I'm just going to whistle through it quite quickly. So the background is this here, this quite sort of dark khaki coloured cotton fabric. So that went down first. There'll be a calico backing behind it as well. And then the actual peacock himself, he's quite layered. You can't actually see how high this comes up. I'll try and get a picture of that. Ginger cat calling for some food as usual. I'll try and get a picture of how high this is, because it comes up kind of like that. So there's lots of padding under this. You can do a lot of padding in applique to bring those different layers up. We're not going to address that in this video because I just want to show you the basics and how you can get going in this really fun technique. So we've got some white on there, and then I've padded this as well. We've got some black velvet. So we've got lots of different fabrics going on here. Cotton, and we've got velvet. Here's a little bit more velvet. It's really nice to give them a little stroke. Lots of padding under here. This has got some carpet felt underneath actually, just to really raise it up really quite solidly. So I've shaped his neck as well. And the feathers, I want to just point out these feathers. There's a lot going on in here. So we've got, let's look at this one here. Got like a sort of metallic gauzy type fabric under there, just with that frayed edge that I mentioned earlier. Then we've got some green fabric on here. Now this is what's called reverse applique, and we're going to have a little look at that one in a moment as well. And this fabric comes through, so we're actually going to cut that away, and you can see the fabric underneath. But it's got another piece on top with a different edging around it, and another one on top of that. So you really can layer up your fabrics and have a lot of fun with that. And I've got variations of that throughout. I've repeated that up here, but this one is different. Got that green fabric underneath. Then I've put this organza type metallic stuff on the top of that, and then that's got another layer on that and another layer on that again. So I've just had fun building up all of those layers. We've got lots of stitching as well added onto this to enhance it. So all of these feathers have been stitched in different threads as well. That just helps to enhance, you know, some of it's shiny, some of it isn't, some of it's twisted. I can see some perlé in there as well. So lots of different threads and materials to make this piece really quite special. And I just want to mention these feathers as well, because this is made with some violin, so some violin that you would use to make curtain pelmets. And this is quite stiff, and I've actually painted this. It's been hand painted and hand stitched as well, and then I've cut those out and I've layered them. There is even a little bit of, just pull that back, little bit of padding under here, just in case you can see underneath it, with some sort of layers of feathers as well. And I've padded these ones, and they're sitting on top of each other, and that's what makes it really high. So lots of different techniques in that. I had a lot of fun making this and experimenting and having a play with these materials. So I'll just try and show you how thick this actually is before we move on. I'll do it to this camera, hopefully you can see that. So that's a good few centimetres, 5 centimetres, a couple of inches, and you can see those layers here. This is the board it's been mounted on. We've got an edging around here. This is my first layer, and then these are these wings that I've just shown you that have been padded as well. So really nice and thick. And if I just do that, hopefully you can see how thick his body is as well. So he really looks like he's sitting on top of those feathers. So you can have a lot of fun with the padding, but as I said, we're not going to look at that in this video yet. That's something that can come when you've a bit more experience. I've got one more piece to show you, which is quite special, but I'm going to show you that later on because I think it will make more sense in context when we do some actual stitching. So do hang around and make sure that you do check that one out. So the first thing I want to mention, if you're going to have a go at something new, is to have a little practice of it first. This is my little practice. I didn't jump straight into this and do this. I have had a little go at it first. Really important just to allow yourself the freedom to make a mistake if you want, and have a play around and have a try and see what it's going to come out like. You can check out this video up here, which is all about sampling how to do it and why to do it. And that will definitely help you to be prepared to work on your first piece. So you're making mistakes on here and not on here. So this is the design that we're going to do. This is a little flower pot design. I'll put this on the free stuff page on the website if you want to have a go at some appliqué too. And I just want to show you what inspired this design. So I found this piece of fabric in my collection, and it's got a little ginger cat on it. And I thought, oh, I've got to put a ginger cat in it, because I was trying to think, what can I do to show you these techniques? And I found him. I thought, I'm going to cut him out and put him on it. And then just by chance, we have some flower pots outside my back door, and he went and sat in front of them yesterday and looked very cute in front of the flower pots. So I thought, well, great, we'll put some flower pots behind him and make some flowers and some flower pots. So that's where this design came from. Just thought you might be interested to know where I get my inspiration from. So I'm going to show you 5 different ways that you can put your fabric down and to deal with the edges when you sew your fabric down. So the first one that we're going to look at, very simple one, and that is just a raw edge. So before I just start that, I want to just mention my setup quickly. So I've got my fabric that I'm going to stitch on some stretcher bar frames, pinned to some stretcher bar frames, and I've got that held in 2 versatile table clamps. I just use 2 to keep it extra still underneath the camera. You only actually need 1 normally. And then I just want to show you what I've done with the layers as well. I've got a backing fabric there, and there's also another fabric sandwiched between, and we'll get to that later. So I'll show you why that is. So there's 3 layers there, and this is the first layer that I am going to put on for my raw edge. So I mentioned earlier about using different fabrics for this, and it's about understanding your fabric and seeing what it will do and what it doesn't do. So the first fabric I've got is this silk, and silk, as you probably know, frays pretty easily, but we can use that to our advantage. And I've actually frayed this edge here, so you can just pull some of these strands out. It'll do that anyway of its own accord if you leave it. And I'm actually going to use that sort of frayed edge. I'm going to make some grass for it. So I'm going to stitch this down onto here, and I'm just going to stitch across here and let that fabric make one of the techniques for me. So this is the simplest way that you can put fabric down. We looked at some of those frayed edges on the peacock as well. And I'm just going to pin this in place initially. It's worth having a set of pins to hand. Now with all of these techniques, it's best to tack or baste your pieces in place first before you stitch them down properly to make sure they don't move. So I've just got an ordinary sewn cotton. I've got one that's not the same colour so that I can see that it's a tacking stitch and it needs to come out later. And I've just got 1 strand in there, and I'm just going to put some quite big stitches in here. This bit doesn't have to look beautiful, and this is just to hold this piece in place, and coming up in the background fabric, stabbing down into that silk. Really big stitches for this. This is just securing it while you stitch it down with your proper thread. So just go all the way around just to secure that in place. It's gone all the way around. I can take my pins out. I'm going to use a really simple stitch to stitch this one down with. Just want to show you how really easy this can be. If you want it to, you can always get more complex with things, but I'm just going to use an embroidery thread. I've got 2 strands for stranded cotton, stranded floss in a green colour that kind of goes with it. This is going to be like the grass that he's sitting on. And then I'm just going to start this at the edge. Do my 2 small stitches down the edge there. The edge of this won't be seen. This will be hidden in whatever I decide to mount this in, if I put it in a hoop or something, so we won't see this. And then I'm just going to work a back stitch, and I'm going to work it quite close to this edge. I'll just get it going and then you can see more clearly what I'm doing. So just straight stitches back on themselves. So come up ahead, back into the end, and we're going to work all the way along the top here. And I'm doing a back stitch because if this does fray further, I don't want it to go further than my stitching. So if I do a solid line along here, then it will stop there if it does do some more fraying. If I just did a running stitch, I've still got some spaces in there and it can continue to fray. So you want to get your fabric down so it's not going to come undone later. So I'm just going to work all the way along the top in this back stitch. So just on that last stitch now, finish that off on the back. So really, really easy way to get some fabric down. You can see that's nice and stable now as well. I've just got that nice little fringe on it. Now we're going to layer some more things on top of this so it will secure it down a bit more. I'm going to leave these tacking stitches in, and then I might come around the bottom and secure this with some actual embroidery stitches later. And I just want to show you quickly as well. I've done that with this piece here. You can see these frayed edges, so I've just stitched round in a circle and just frayed these edges nicely, so you can use that as a really nice textural effect on your work. And second technique I want to show you is what to do if you want a nice clean smooth edge. You don't want a frayed edge at all, you want it to be nice and clean. So we're actually going to fold the edges under now. So this is the turned edge technique. So I suggest if you want to have a go at this little flower pot design, this is a good time to cut the shapes out. So those are templates for the pieces that we are going to apply onto the fabric. So cut them all out. You can see that here. So I've cut my flower pot out and my 2 leaves, and I'll explain the circle when we get to that. And I should cut the ginger cat out as well, really. I'll do that in a second. So this is sort of roughly where they're going to go. You can place them now. You can pin them in place if you want to, so you don't forget. I'm not going to do that just because I want to show you on the camera what I'm doing, but normally I would pin those in place so I know exactly where everything's going. So we're going to do this plant pot. So I'll just move these out of the way for now. Just want to make sure you can fit it all on, and I'm going to place the plant pot over this frayed edge, so that covers that up and that's nice and secure. So we're going to turn these edges. So I found this lovely bit of fabric. This is also a silk fabric, and this again frays quite easily. Storm going on outside today, I think. This is actually from a tie. And they're just such beautiful fabrics. If you've got some old ones, cut them or iron them. They're really lovely pieces of fabric. So I thought we'd do my plant pot in that. And we're going to use this template. Now I want that side, so I'm going to turn that over, put my template on the back. And this really needs to be done on an ironing board. I suggest you iron this as you go. It's much easier to work with if you do that, but I'll just show you the process here. So I'll put that in the middle. And what I'm going to do is to fold it round my template. Let's go a bit lower than that. Like so. So I'm going to fold each side, so you can go top and bottom like so, and then you can do it at the end. So fold in and fold in, and then I'm going to fold, then I would iron that flat there and flat at the top, so you've got those nice creases, and then you can fold in at the side too, and you can iron that down here. And then I suggest you deal with this point. You do it like you would wrap a present. So fold it in on the edge and then over like so and in like so. And that gives you your nice sharp point like that. Put the iron in it, don't burn yourself. These are quite small pieces, and then that will iron in place. And do that all the way round. I'm going to cut that off there, fold that one in as well, iron it flat. Once you've ironed it flat, you can take that pattern piece out. You can leave it in if you want, but obviously if you leave it in, you can't wash it or move it or anything like that. So I've taken my pieces out, and then I'm going to just pin those in place so I've got an actual piece. Now I've done that already because I don't have an iron to hand, so I've done one of those like so out of this fabric, and I've just pinned it, so I've made myself a solid shape that I can put on top of the fabric and I can stitch down. So that bit can be a little bit fiddly, but just take your time with it. And I do recommend ironing it because that will help you immensely. So I'm just going to mark the position of that with a couple of pins. And I'm going to remove that because what I'm going to do is just work a basting stitch, tacking stitch around that edge so that this stays nice and secure. When I come to stitch it, this will come out again, so it doesn't have to be beautiful, but just right along that edge. Been all the way around the edge, that's nice and secure, it's not going to come undone now, so I can just take those pins out. Mark where it's going to go, and then I can just use that thread just to hold it in place. Just do a big stitch across the corner, and that will hold it all down, and then when I come to stitch it, I save myself a whole lot of bother of having to hold it all still and in place because it's already there, nice and secure, and I can just concentrate on the stitches instead. So we're going to use a slip stitch to stitch this down with. It's an easy stitch to do, and it means we won't be able to see the stitch and it will look like a seamless plant pot. So I'm going to start in the corner there, and what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of the fabric of the plant pot, little small stitch in there, put the needle in, you can see, just done a tiny little stitch like so. And I'm going to work along the top, then I'm going to go back into the fabric, base fabric, where I came out of the plant pot. I'm going to do a little stitch in that. And come up in the base fabric, short distance away, so that's my short stitch in my base fabric. Then we do another short stitch in the plant pot. So we just take a little bit of that edge there. I'm not worrying about going into that fabric, I'm just going through the fabric of the top of the plant pot where I folded it over, sort of in the crease if you like. And then that goes back in the fabric underneath. And then back in the plant pot. I'm going to do that all the way along. You can just see that there, that's quite a good shot there. How I've just caught the fold of the fabric and there's a stitch in that there. So it's just one in the backing fabric, one in the plant pot, one in the backing fabric, one in the plant pot. I'm going to work all the way to the end, and then I can just pull that tight and it will pull it nicely down to the surface of the fabric, and then I'm going to go all the way around the plant pot like that, and we'll have a look and see what that looks like. So I'm just going over this little frayed bit here, but don't worry about that, just carry on as normal, just picking up that little bit of fabric in the fold straight down through those stitches. They'll just lie where they want to lie, that's fine. Pull that, you see when I pull that tight, that comes down nice and tightly, this piece of fabric here, and right back into that last corner there, bit of the fabric of the pot, and then we'll do one more stitch down into here, and the pot is on. So let's just remove the tacking stitches so we can see what that looks like. Let's do it with them all. Got all of those out, and you can see the plant pot now really, so seamless edge there, you can't see your stitching at all. I'm just going to finish that off underneath. So if you find this a little bit fiddly, you could just do a straight plant pot, that would be easier to fold, or I've got some more edges coming up that you might prefer instead. Just want to quickly mention how you do this technique with a circle. So I've just cut one out here to show you, and you can see I've cut an extra edge around. This is the edge we're going to fold over, and all you need to do is to cut these little tabs in it. So I've just cut into the edge almost up to that template, not quite. We're just going to fold those over like so, and that will make our circle. And then if you press these down with the iron, they will stay in place. And then you can remove the paper template, and you can do the same. You can tack around the edge to make sure they don't come unfolded, and made yourself a little circle you can turn upside down and you can stitch onto your fabric. So I just wanted to show you how to do that technique with the circle. So let's look at a different edging technique now, and I'm going to show you that on my 2 leaves. So I've got some green cotton now. We've used some silk already. That's quite a tricky fabric to use. If you want something much simpler, cotton is really nice. It doesn't fray quite so much as the silk does, and it's nice and fine and easy to manipulate. So I'm going to do my leaves in this. I'm just going to pin my templates on. I've cut them out onto my fabric, turn the fabric over, so you make sure you're doing it on the back, so you turn it the right way around. Your leaf is the right way around. I'm going to pin that to the fabric and I'm going to cut around my leaves. So I've cut those out and I can remove those templates now, so I don't need those anymore. Place them in position. Leave a little space, so I'm going to sew these down now with green cotton. So I'm going to match it now. We're going to see these stitches only a little bit until we cover them up, so I'm going to match my cotton to my leaf. So just pin that one into place so it doesn't move, and all I'm going to do with this one, I've started my thread off with my knot, my 2 small stitches underneath the leaf because we won't see that. I'm just going to stab down into the leaf, so just a little stab stitch up in the fabric down into the leaf, just catching the edge of it. You don't want big long stitches for this. And again, if you want to just tack that into place first, you can. It's only small, so I'm just going to hold it with my finger while I show you, but you can put some big tacking stitches across that and hold that into place if you want to. Just nice even stitches all the way around, up into the background fabric, down into the leaf, and that's just going to hold it in place, and then we're going to work a stitch over the top of that. So I'm going to work all the way around. I'll get both leaves in place, I think, and then I'll show you the stitch that we're going to use. Been around both the leaves with my stab stitch, and this is actually an edge on its own if you want to. If you do it neatly and do the spacing nice and evenly all the way around, and you've got a fabric that doesn't fray too much, this works really nice just as an edge on its own. But I'm going to put some stitches over these stitches and make it look a bit more decorative. So I've got some of the green thread that I used for the first raw edge technique. I've just got 2 strands of it, and I'm going to work a buttonhole stitch around it. So I'll just start my thread off. Now you can start your threads on the back. I'm just not turning it over because it's in the frame, but you can start your threads. Just weave it under a bit of the fabric on the back. We've got 3 layers here, so you've got plenty of places to hide your stitches. So I'm going to start right down in the point of this leaf, and I'm going to do a buttonhole. So we do have a video on that and all of these stitches that I'm using as well in the stitch library, so you can check that out there. And I'm going to make sure that I take my stitches over those little stab stitches so they get covered up and we can't see them. So we make the loop and come up inside the loop on the edge of the leaf. I'm just going to build up this row of buttonhole over the edge of the leaf and make a really decorative edge, and that will just really secure the edge of this fabric. And it looks nice at the same time. So just working my way carefully around there. I'm going to just alter the length of the buttonhole just to make it look a bit more leaf-like. Inside the hole, pull it away from me to tension it, and just making sure I cover all of those little stitches as I go. You can just see there's a slight angle. I'm just going to angle them all the way up. If I do them straight in, it doesn't look very organic. So I'm going to work my way up the side, and then I'll show you what we do at the point. So let's just show you those last few stitches at the point. Still keeping that stitch going with that angle. Just going to come right off the top of the point just to emphasize it. If you want a point, then make sure it's a point. I think that's a flat point, and just right to that very edge, like so. And then just to finish that, it's down the other side of it, as it's not complete until you've done that bit. Pull that down tight. Now I'm going to finish that on the back, and I suggest when you do the other side, so it looks symmetrical, I would come back to the bottom and go up round that side and meet it at the top, rather than sort of turning around and coming back on itself. So I'll do that, and then we'll have a look at the whole leaf. Last few stitches at the top. Really nice solid stitch this, if you want to really make sure something's not going to move. This is the stitch to do it in. and then just over there again, just to finish that off so it doesn't come undone. And you can see how nice an edge this makes. It's got this edge to the buttonhole stitch anyway, and then when you do that over the edge of the leaf, just makes a really beautiful secure edge to it. So that's a buttonhole edge. There's lots of other stitches you can do as well to cover the edge. I'll just show you one more on this leaf. So we're going to look at a couched edge now. We're going to do some couching. So we're going to stitch over another thread. This is where you can get really creative with it. You can put some gold threads down, you can put some sparkly threads, whatever you like, around the edge, because that's going to sit on the top. I'm going to do some stitching over it. So I'm just going to stick to my green. I've got 6 strands of my stranded cotton here. So that's the thread I'm going to couch over. And I'm going to couch over it with 1 strand of the same colour. Now you can make it decorative and do a different colour if you want to. I'm going to make it blend in. So I've come up in my fabric just outside my leaf, just in the white fabric outside, and I'm just going to place that in position. Leave yourself a tail end to take through to the back later, so make sure you've got enough to get around your leaf. Actually, a bit of a longer end. There we go. And all I'm going to do is over the top of that and back down. Now I'm going to stab back down into the green leaf. That will just give it a bit of extra security, and keep these stitches nice and even. So up on the outside, down on the inside, and stitching over that 6 strands of stranded. And you can see I'm not pulling on this, I'm just going to lie it in position. If I pull on it, it's going to pull through those stitches, but it also ends up straightening out. And if you want to go around a nice curve, you don't want that. So no need to handle it too much, just place it in position and stitch over it. And you can put as many as you like. You can have a nice big thick chunky one if you like, or you can have a nice delicate one. Obviously the thicker it is, the better it will cover those little stab stitches we did previously, so do think about that if you want to cover those up. So I'm going to go all the way around this, and then we'll have a look at what to do with those 2 ends. Being all the way around, this is a nice quick stitch as well if that matters and you want to do something quickly. So I'm going to take these ends to the back now, so put them in a great big chunky needle and just take it through right on that point. Take this one through as well, and I'll show you how I'm going to finish those off. I've left my thread that I was couching with in the needle, you can just see it there. I'm going to use that to finish these off. So you could thread these through the fabric on the back, but they're a bit chunky being 6 strands, so I'm just going to sew over them. So I've got the needle that I used for my couching, and I'm really just going to couch them on the back, I guess. So I'm just picking up a bit of the fabric, that backing fabric there, and a bit of my stitches. I'm just going to sew it down. Now this is a gold work technique. If you've done any gold work, you'll be familiar with this one. This is how we finish off our gold ends that we take through to the back. You don't need to do loads of stitches, just enough to keep that secure. Maybe about 1 centimetre, 1/8 of an inch. Make those stitches quite close, quite solid. And then when you think you've put enough stitches in, you can just go through that loop. That just makes a little knot over the top. Pull that tightly, and then just for good luck, I go back once more, but you don't need to. And then you can cut that one off, and then we'll lie that one down that way. So we spread that out so we haven't got lumps on the back, and I'll do that the same way and then cut that end off too. Okay, so we've done 4 edges so far. We've got frayed, we've got turned, we've got 2 versions of stitched edges, and I want to just show you the reverse applique. And at the very beginning I mentioned that I'd sandwiched that extra piece of fabric in between, so now we're going to cut away the top layer, and you'll see that second piece of fabric underneath. I'm going to turn the edges under, so I'm going to show you how to do that. So I've cut out my circle from my pattern pieces. I'm going to place that in position and draw around it. Now you can draw around it with a pencil, do it very lightly. You shouldn't see these marks, but just in case, I'm going to use a water-soluble pen, so that will come off, and just draw around that. That will mark the bit I'm actually going to cut out. Like so. And then I'm going to work a running stitch around the edge of that. We're going to cut all this out, and I want my material to be stable. As soon as you cut some fabric out, it's going to destabilize, so you want to make sure that's a bit more stable. So I'm going to work a stitch around that. I think we'll use an orange thread. If you want to work another row around the outside to mark where these stitches are, you can, or you can just eyeball it if you want to. I'm going to do some running stitches. Now I've left myself a reasonable distance between this one and that inner circle, because we're going to fold those pieces of fabric underneath back on themselves. So if you don't leave yourself enough space, you can't fold them far enough. So fairly big gap between your stitching and the inner circle. So my running stitch is stabilising my fabric, because now we're going to cut. So this is the difficult bit, and for me too, because I can only do it once on the camera. So we're going to just make sure we find the middle of the hole first and one of the threads. If you dig the scissors in and just cut, you're going to cut through all your layers, and then you're going to have to do something creative to cover it up. So what I'm going to do is just lift up with a needle that top fabric. You can see how that's coming up. I can feel that that's not gone through more than one layer. And you're just sort of really pulling out, if you can, just one strand of the weave. It's a little bit fiddly, but once you make the first cut, it's much easier. So just take the time to do this properly. So I've got that first strand. I'm happy that that's only one layer of fabric and I haven't got the ones underneath. So what I'm going to do is put the scissors under there and just cut that. Make sure you've got some nice sharp scissors to do this. So there's my first cut. So I'm happy now that I can get my scissors in there. I can feel that that's only one layer. I can see the scissors underneath. If you're not sure, just pull out another one until that you are sure. And I'm just going to cut very carefully to the edge of that circle that I have drawn. Like so. First cut's in. And then I'm going to go up to the top, so you can just slide the scissors in there. You can get some scissors with a little kind of blunt ball on the bottom one. They're called appliqué scissors, and you can put that in, and that means you don't cut the fabric underneath. But if you go carefully, you'll be fine with ordinary scissors. So just going to cut to the top, so down to the bottom. And that way, I'm going to have to do some gymnastics. This is easier if you take it out of the clamp, by the way, but you won't be able to see what I'm doing if I do that, so I'm going to try and do it this way. So I've got these 4 flaps now, so we're just going to do some more cutting. So we're just going to cut little tabs like I showed you on the circle. So just make 2 more cuts into there. So I've cut all of these now, and you can see that fabric underneath. This is really nice when you do the kind of reveal. You remember what fabric it was you put underneath. So I'm just going to cut those down a bit because I want to fold them underneath. So I'm just going to cut each one at a time. That far. That bit needs to be as wide as that bit. It's going to fold underneath. Move all those little ends. If you're not sure, just cut a little bit. You can always cut more off. You can't add it on again afterwards, so just go really carefully with this stage. Now you can see these little tabs. They're going to fold underneath. I think I'll just cut that one a touch more. Now we're just going to fold them first, and all I'm going to do is one at a time. I'm just going to get the edge and push it underneath. You can tidy it up afterwards, so don't worry too much if it's not quite right. Needle on the edge, just push it underneath. Go all the way round and get all those tabs turned in. So just fiddle very carefully with it until all those tabs are underneath and you've got a smoother circle as you can get. Now you can do a couple of things at this point. So you can either use the technique we use for the plant pot. If you're going to do that, definitely work a tacking basting stitch around there to keep those in place because they're not very big. They will pop out quite easily. Or you can use the stab stitch method that we use for around the leaves. That one's easier, so I'm going to show you that one. And I'm just going to use a coloured cotton. Now you could do it in white if you don't want it to show. I'm going to use it in red and I'm going to match it with my plant pot, and I'm going to make these stitches part of the design, so they need to be nice and neat. And I'm just going to come up inside that circle now and then down into those little tabs that I've folded under. So just stabbing down, slightly bigger stitch now because these are decorative stitches. Try and space them nice and evenly apart. Just see how carefully I'm working. This is quite delicate until it's sewn down. So just take your time with it. Up on the inside, down onto that edge, and that will just hold down those little tabs that we folded underneath. So I'll go all the way around that. Last two stitches, that's come out quite well. Considering I was under pressure, do it right first time. If it does all go wrong, by the way, and these edges start to fray, treat it as a frayed edge and put some decorative stitching over it. These things can always be rescued. It's always something that you can do, but this one hasn't gone wrong, so I won't be showing you that technique today. So there we are, back to the beginning, and that's nice and secure now, and you can add to it and do all sorts of things on it, which I'm going to do in a minute, but I just wanted to show you now. Now you've seen how reverse applique works, that's it at its simplest form, and I wanted to show you this piece here. I'll show you in detail in a second. I think I picked this up in Mexico. It looks quite Mexican, and this is absolutely stunning piece of reverse applique. I'll just put it on here so you can see it close up. So this is the technique we have just done. So the bottom layer of fabric's actually this bright red one here. It's got some on top. So here's the layer on top with the slip stitch edge that we did around the plant pot. And there's another one on top of that again with the same edging on it. So you can't see the stitches on that. This is the base fabric. And then this one is on top, and this is on top, and this is on top. So these ones have actually been cut away. This black one has gone on next and been cut away. This orange one has then gone on and been cut away, and then this red one. So there's about 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of reverse applique in here. It's absolutely mind-boggling. If I just put my finger next to it, you'll see how big that is. It's tiny, tiny, tiny. The skill in this, I can't emphasize how skilled this is to do. And I'll just show you this little bit as well. We've got more here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers of reverse applique in here, and look how tiny it is. And they've done shapes in it as well. Absolutely incredible piece of applique. That really stunning. And once you've had a little go at it, you really appreciate what's gone into this. So I just wanted to show you that. So that is absolutely incredible. So those are 5 ways to put your applique pieces of fabric down, but it's not finished yet because I'm going to add Ginger Cat. He's not in there yet, and a few extra embellishments as well, because I think you're not done when you put the fabric down. You can do more with it. So I'm going to add some beads and some stitches and a Ginger Cat, and then something to hold the flower onto the pot. So we'll do that next. Little Ginger Cat's been sitting here with me while I've been stitching on a Ginger Cat. Yeah, I have been stitching you on. So let me show you around what I have done. So let's start at the top with the flower. So I added a couple more stitches around here, actually in between those ones. Just thought it needed to be a little bit more secure. And then I put some beads in the middle. It's really nice to add things like beads for extra texture to it. And I just put a row of stitching around here. So this is detached chain stitch. This is in our stitch library if you want to know how to do that. And then put some French knots on the inside here as well. Just start to build up some texture. Go on if you're going, because you wobble the table. Sure. What was I saying? Oh yeah, French knots around here. So you could keep building up as many stitches as you like, and it's a bit hard to know when to stop really. So I've just stopped there. Just down to the plant pot, I put a row of stitching across here. They have this kind of rim around the top of them, and I just thought just putting a row of couching, that's the same stitches I've done around here, across here just makes it look a bit more like a plant pot. Here's Ginger Cat, put him on, he's so sweet. And I had a little flower behind his head, so I left the flower on and I cut out 3 more flowers from the same bit of fabric, and I've put these down with little star stitches in the middle, so just straight stitches that all go down into the centre, and a bead in the centre just to secure it, so there's nothing securing it apart from that, so they kind of overlap and they stand up a little bit, which is quite nice. And then to put Ginger Cat down, I've done the couching method here that I did around this leaf, so just put this thread around him, stitched over the top with one strand of it, and that's holding him nice and securely. So there's just one more thing to go on, and that is a stem for the flower. And what I've actually got is a little twig. If you saw my slow stitching video, you'll see that twigs seem to be becoming a little bit of a thing. Just to show you really that you can put anything on, you can apply anything in your appliqué that you want to. And I just thought, oh, what can I put in the middle? And it was actually Jonathan's idea. I'll give him credit for that. He said, well, why don't you put a stick on it? So he sent him off into the garden and he found me a stick from somewhere. So I'm going to stitch that down just with a couple of strands of the same thread I stitched Ginger Cat down with. It's quite nice to keep these threads running through, and then you've got it sort of all tied together. One side over the top, and then we'll get one right on that end just to make sure that doesn't come off. Obviously if you put things like twigs on and this that's got poppy heads on it, then you can't wash it, but it is fun to have a little play with these things. So I'll finish that thread on the back, and then I'm going to call that done. I could keep going, put some more bits on it, but I won't, so I think we'll call that finished. So I hope you've enjoyed that little look into the appliqué technique and are inspired to have a go. Don't forget you can download the patterns for the flower pot from my website, from the free stuff page. The link is in the description below this video, and if you've enjoyed it, do give it a thumbs up. That helps more people to see the video. And if you're interested to have a go at putting some beads on, you might want to check out this video here on 5 different stitches with beads, and I'll see you next time. You can download the design from the free stuff page on my website.